when I was at Amazon as a PM, it was actually, just going really well. And at the same time, there was just a knowing that this isn't what I'm meant to do. This isn't all I'm meant to do, or there's more I want to do. And I don't know what that is. But I had already been kind of planting the seeds. Like for years, I was going to conferences. I was like about mental health and well-being, and I was exploring healing modalities and talking to coaches. So I kind of started getting my feet wet without knowing I was getting my feet wet. And then it so happened I went to a meetup for divorced women and just felt this my heart kind of intuiting that here's something where I can make a difference and it really means a lot to me. So that was enough for me to say, hey, I don't know what it'll be. Maybe it'll be a community, maybe it'll be a mental health app, but that's enough for me to say, okay, I've got enough of a signal.
Second act, lives beyond the job title.
Hey, Anubha, I'm so excited to have you on the Second Act, Life Beyond the Job Title podcast. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Gayatri. Excited to be here.
Yeah, super excited to be here because your story is a really great one. You have had what many people would call a very impressive tech resume, right? You have a PhD from Stanford, tech leadership roles at Meta, Amazon, and eBay. And today, you actually guide women through inner transformation, right? So when you look back, do you feel like these are two completely different lives for you, or are they all chapters of the same story?
That's a great question. It's actually more like maybe even 3 to 4 different lives, in the sense that sometimes I look back at those different chapters and say, well, that felt like a whole different human. The part that your audience doesn't know yet is I studied computer science and management. So I was kind of poised to be an entrepreneur or, a PM in Silicon Valley, but I wasn't such a fan of what was going on. So then I went on to do the PhD. So the PhD was the period in which I thought I would want to be a teacher or maybe, a researcher. And I think that was really an attempt to honor my depth, kind of go deep into a subject. And so this tension between depth and wanting to then do something practical in the real world kind of led to what looks like different lives, right? Because then I left the PhD to kind of make my way into tech. And again, the thinking there was, well, I want to do something that makes an impact in everyday people's lives. And so then that's how I've understood the journey, is that I was looking for scripts or roles that would make sense, that would honor me and honor my strengths, but it required this winding process. And that's why I also think of it as really just chapters of a single, like multi-talented being, a multifaceted being who has, a desire for depth. Like I'm a deep thinker, I'm very intensely curious, and just kind of dream very big. So somehow there was an attempt to honor those characteristics, which I would say is my swabhava, like, the Sanskrit word for my innate tendencies and my disposition, my strengths and weaknesses, and how that got expressed is what changed over time. But the common core is always there. And that's how I've now been able to connect the dots. So it really makes a lot of sense, even if the hats were completely different.
So it's more like your journey, which we will cover soon. It's kind of been in search of like what you're really attracted to as that swabhava, right? It's kind of trying to stay true to that. And it's manifesting itself in different ways as you're going on this journey.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know you talk a lot about in your writing about helping women reclaim their radiance. So what is radiance? What does it mean?
Yeah, there's 2 levels at which I think about this. When I say reclaim your radiance, it's a sense of aliveness, vitality, kind of just feeling fully like yourself. You're not dimming your light because you're seeking belonging or surviving somehow. So you're fully yourself and expressing yourself that way. But then there's also the sense that radiance as a term points to who you already are, who we already are, beneath all the roles and definitions and identities we have latched onto temporarily. So in some sense, we are trying to recognize that radiance in all of our life's work. I'm also, orienting my work towards helping people move towards that ultimate question also of who are we? Yeah.
So what are some examples for anybody who's new to your work? What kind of services or experiences do you offer today?
Right. Guiding women through inner transformation. I took on the label of leadership coach or transformational coach. And my work has been one-on-one, longer-term engagements with single individuals, sometimes doing workshops or group things. A newfound interest in exploring what it means to be a woman now in these changing times, and a woman leader in particular. How to be self-led in the world today.
Something there, especially for people in tech. There's a lot of transformation that's happening. Companies reorging, new technologies are coming up, and a lot of us are adapting to this new way of, okay, what does work look like in this for me in this new world? All right. So let's actually go back to the beginning, right? I want to talk about how you started on this journey. A lot of people think of like tech or a career change as kind of like a clean pivot. But as you mentioned, you went through multiple transitions, right? So it feels a lot more non-linear in your case. So how did you see your path?
Yeah. It is a series of experiments, and it has been very nonlinear. I used to think, why do I not know what it is I want to do and to discover my truth for myself? And that's what life's work gives us. Like, it gives us chances to explore and find more of ourselves and understand the world we're in. So this is how I've understood is what I was after. And that makes the pivoting process less about, oh, I'm shifting from one identity to another. It's more like, well, what's true for me now? And in a way, you cannot get to discover that kind of truth unless you treat your life like an experiment, in a way. It's not so much about risk taking, but as to say, hey, I'm willing to bend and explore. And so for me, it just turned out that I had many sides to me. And that's why, yeah, I think a takeaway for the audience is like, there's just best not to think of their second act as like a one-time leap. You hear a lot of stories like, hey, I took a leap. It doesn't have to be a leap. Explore your way through it. You don't have to, in fact, it's better not to latch on to another fixed identity, because in the times we're in, it's just better to be agile and curious and let that lead the way. So I just serve as an example for people to feel a little less tension about making this big pivot.
You spoke about, you felt like you weren't completely fulfilled with whatever that current role is, right? So I am curious, like, what were some signals you were looking at because I've heard this from other folks too, where people are like, I feel like there's something out there. It's feeling a little unsettled and they're trying to figure out what that particular thing is.
I will say I had always felt an undercurrent of dissatisfaction, and whether there was that one thing which would actually feel more satisfying. And again, I think that was just wrong. It's not that there was going to be one thing. It was more that I just really wanted to explore all of these different things. And so, yeah, if I had to answer your question more directly, it's not like there was a clear, there were lots of little intuitions that somehow this isn't right. This isn't quite what I want. And to give you an example, when I was at Amazon as a PM, it was actually, just going really well. And at the same time, there was just a knowing that this isn't what I'm meant to do. This isn't all I'm meant to do, or there's more I want to do. And I don't know what that is, but I had already been kind of planting the seeds. Like for years, I was going to conferences. I was like about mental health and well-being, and I was exploring healing modalities and talking to coaches. So I kind of started getting my feet wet without knowing I was getting my feet wet. And then it so happened I went to a meetup for divorced women and just felt this my heart kind of intuiting that here's something where I can make a difference and it really means a lot to me. So that was enough for me to say, hey, I don't know what it'll be. Maybe it'll be a community. Maybe it'll be a mental health app. But that's enough for me to say, okay, I've got enough of a signal and I'm feeling stagnation, even though the pace at Amazon was pretty fast. So that's basically how it worked out for me.
So you mentioned heartbreak coaching and you also talked about that meetup, right? How did you start with something there?
I think once that realization was made, it was easier for me to say that, hey, I actually don't have, some people will start creating a product on the side and then leave the company. I knew I just didn't have that level of time, especially given the busyness of that role. So I just made a clean break from Amazon. And then for the first 6 months, I was doing just ideation, understanding the space, the market, people's pain points, what were other people who were going through divorce needing, and then also just kind of coming up with a set of options of how I would realize that. So those were honestly my first steps. It was just with an intent to be of service.
Got it. Got it. You started off being a coach that felt like the most natural and personal to you to kind of begin
Yeah.
with, right? Yeah.
And to connect the
Um,
dots with the earlier part of our conversation, like, there were underutilized strengths in empathy, holding space, in just being curious about another person. And so coaching just lent itself well to that at that point.
So tell me about financial readiness, right? Like you said, you made a clean break when you were doing this. For somebody who's like listening to this thinking, oh my God, I don't think I can afford this change. I have so many commitments. What would you want them to understand about timing and trust?
I was definitely sick enough that I wanted to make it work no matter what. Let me trust that I'll find the way to make it work. And if not, let me actually, this is what I could have done, but I didn't do, is like thought about creative solutions. I did kind of make a list of like, hey, if I'm sort of getting into, uncomfortable territory, maybe I'll do some side gigs. And I made a list of side gigs that I could do that wouldn't jeopardize my path. Did some kind of, mental and emotional preparation. But most people are probably ready. They just need to have that trust and figure out that and realize they'll find some creative solution if they're on their
Like,
path.
what were some examples of things that, if you don't mind sharing, what are some examples of the types of compromises and things that you felt you were like okay with?
Oh, compromises. Yeah, I mean, well, first I will say I was a little bit very confident that I would just like this is my mission, my passion. I'm gonna make this work. So not to sound too proud, it was just that the want was that clear for me. And I think that's always helpful. And the other thing is which doesn't mean I wasn't shit scared throughout, I was looking at my finances pretty regularly, thinking about burn rate, talking to people about how I could, simplify my life. I definitely lived a very simple life, which helps. You don't need much sometimes. Of course, I didn't have a mortgage, which helped, but rent was pretty expensive in SF. So yeah, just kind of budgeting, thinking a bit, and then that list, as I said, of things I could do. I was willing to say, if I even have to do something that doesn't take my creative energy, like go and pack boxes or be a barista, if I had to do something that I wouldn't normally do to keep my passion going, my mission fully addressed, I'll just do that. That's basically how it was.
Okay, got it. So when you think about that period of your life, success is not like an overnight thing, right? It takes some time to start seeing it. So tell me about how you kind of kept yourself motivated, or if there's like any early signals that kind of led you to say, okay, this is the path I want to continue to go on.
Signals came through sometimes through just kind of what people call as synchronicities, like a sense that, hey, I did something and I got some good feedback immediately in response or shortly after. Sometimes it was as simple as somebody saying, what you wrote or what you said the other day, that really helped me. That was like, that shifted something or led to a breakthrough. So that was okay. Automatically, I am doing something that's of value. I just need to figure out how to monetize and create my business systems and my business models accordingly. Myself the time. So of course, just feedback was a big one. Um, and the other one was just self-knowledge. Again, I had been, as I'm trying to paint a picture. I didn't know why I was dissatisfied and what would click. So there was a lot of self-examination throughout and seeing that, hey, this actually feels better. Like I'm energized, I'm wanting to wake up. So those were my primary sources of motivation, to be honest, and it was very tough. It's just the reality is that I second guessed or questioned it quite a few times while still saying, no, I know my bigger area of growth going forward will be that mixture of coaching, teaching, community, writing. So let me hold on to that. I just need to find my way.
I think the last time we spoke, you had mentioned something about a win book. Yeah, what is that? What is a win book?
That was actually a pretty simple thing to do. I basically kept a, Google spreadsheet called wins and every little thing, including my first client, little feedback, an extra special thank you, a speaking gig or some sort of workshop that, got attendance and got good attendance and people were like, it's exactly what I wanted to hear. I wrote down like verbatim the words from everyone and just kept that
Nice.
going.
Yeah, I really like that. I feel like we don't celebrate our wins enough. Just having an email somebody sent, on days when you're down, just looking at that, I think is really a
Yeah.
good reminder. Yeah.
And just because especially if you're a solopreneur, which maybe some of your viewers will be, creating everything you can to make those reminders happen beyond something in a spreadsheet. It's whatever inspires you around you, creating the environment to be, this is now your life to kind of design on your own. So all of that helped. I definitely went through a longer transformation than I can remember even now.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, let's shift gears to actually understanding going a little bit behind the scenes. Like, what does it mean to be a leadership transformation coach, right? Like, what are all the things like sales, marketing? Tell me about what goes on there.
So, I mean, regardless of whether you have a team or, or a solopreneur, you're now a business owner. So there's a lot of just learning how to be your own boss, creating the disciplines and the structures to help you do that, getting the support team in place to do that. And the things that are less obvious to people, especially when they think about coaching, is that in addition to what you normally think of as like, hey, I'm going to have to just, be with my client and coach. I'm going to do some sales, marketing. You're going to spend a lot of time, at least I did spend a lot of time reading, studying, understanding what's shifting culturally, ongoing professional development, having a very strict self-care routine with proper meditation and all of that. So then I can show up rested and present and fully aware in awareness with my clients. So that's a lot of stuff that people may not always think of. That is, part and parcel of the work. One thing that I failed to mention, but that kind of falls under sales and marketing, is just client creation can be a pretty creative process. It's not just about outreach and, cold emails or something. You're spending time talking to people, sometimes in unlikely scenarios, and just trying to be of help. And you don't know when and how that turns into a lead down the line. But that's an ongoing.
That's something I think a lot of folks would be kind of interested in. Like, because I know you write a lot as well, and probably there are people coming through that. But in general, how do people discover you, and how do they reach
Yeah.
out to you? Yeah.
There have been some really surprising ways in which they discover me, which I didn't expect would be that fruitful. Just like I remember this, I had this simple blog post on the poem by Rumi, The Guest House, and it has received so many hits over the years because I think it was getting indexed pretty well by Google. And people have randomly written to me saying, "Hey, I once read this post of yours, and then I suddenly thought of you when I was going through my own tech transition, and the grief I experienced leaving tech. And so some clients have just found me through writings or like a little comment on a Facebook post because I haven't done nearly as much. Like I've focused so much on my own growth during this chapter of my life that people have just found me mysteriously. Also, LinkedIn, of course. People will sometimes just search for a coach on LinkedIn, and that's how they found me too. Word of mouth
Okay.
always works too.
Yeah. So, what is one thing that you'd say, because you've been doing this for almost 4 years now, right, Anubha? You've been in this
Yeah, the second iteration as coach is more than 4 years at this point. Yeah.
more than 4 years. Wow. Okay, cool. So you've been doing this for 4 years now. And so what is something that's kind of really surprised you about this? And what's been the most fun and what's been really rougher than you thought?
Yeah, I think the surprise and rough kind of go together. For instance, it just requires far more emotional energy and not just to be with clients, really, which can actually be quite energizing, but also just then to process everything that's happening. Because if you're a good coach, you're also constantly transforming in response to what you're working through with your clients. So I would often, take pretty copious notes, actually, go back and translate them because I wanted to go into that so deeply to understand how the transformational process was working and like lead to a lot more insight for myself. In some ways, I've never worked harder in my life than I have in the last 4 to 6 years, both because of the intensity with which I worked and also because of all the changes it brought about in me. So that's what was both surprising and challenging. But yeah, it's one of the most rewarding careers I've had in terms of just really being taken into the inner lives of so many people and being trusted so deeply. Like the level of intimacy and connection and just a sense of shared humanity. I've learned so much. I've grown so much. So all of that has been very rewarding.
How do you define success compared to your earlier chapter?
Yeah. I would say the key distinction for me as I look back at the earlier chapter versus now is that even when I talked about it just, a few minutes ago, I said I was thinking about how can I make a difference? There was a lot of focus on can I figure out what will be impactful from an outsider's view? Like I was kind of looking at it as something outside of me that I must somehow make better. Now that has just subdued a bit because I trust that it's happening. Like it's all happening. The people I'm meeting are all, exactly the right fit. And impact is made in many ways that are subtle, not always described through things like metrics, titles, amounts. So then now it's kind of like you don't actually have any script or, set of goals that can be defined so easily. So now success, along with my own personal development, has become just, can I know who I am? Can I know who I really am? And can I live in alignment with what seems to be true for me? Because that has also been difficult. So easy to fall off.
Now that you're also going to go to a group cohort, is that something you sat through and you were like, okay, this is going to be my next transition? How do you set goals? And is there a process you follow?
Yeah. I mean, I am quite meticulous about storing all of my observations, my own iterative idea of who I'm serving and what their psychographic is and what their pain points are. Everything is being tracked. Also, just lots and lots of ideas for ways in which I can create offerings, services, different types of business models. So there's kind of a part of my brain actively sorting out what would be most fruitful and helpful on all fronts at all times. That said, yeah, maybe once a quarter, definitely once, every 6 months, there's a concerted effort to look through and say, okay, what's changing, what's shifting now? And so it wasn't so strategic. It was just kind of an inner knowing that started growing and stronger that my pure one-on-one time is done. Like I've learned a lot. It's not that I won't continue doing it. It's just that now this message can be translated, these ideas and this, wisdom can be translated into, I mean, think about me doing the PhD. There was always a side of me that wanted to be a teacher, an educator. And so that happened very naturally. The planning didn't actually lead to that. It just kind of happened.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
inner knowing.
Looking at cohort programs, who are the type of people you're envisioning impacting?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It will be women who are, especially, I mean, who basically people who are on a similar journey to me, which is I was very left brained, well educated, analytical. We're used to working with, particular skills in, especially in tech, and shifting to more and more of the creative, inspirational, and entrepreneurial sides. Kind of, fleshing out your whole personality. Whatever programs I create here are kind of an invitation to such women to feel safe to commune with other women of the same kind. And together we explore what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a leader, how to move from all that survival programming or, ways in which we've been thinking about how life operates to being more sovereign, being more self-led.
Okay, awesome. And where can we find some of the information around this? Is it on your website or?
Well, easy way to find it is anubhakothari.com, and then you'll find all the offerings under Bloom. So there's the Bloom Room, and the other container is for a small group, maybe 6 to 10 women, and that's called Bone and Bloom. And that's going to be a very high touch, personal contact, supportive, transformational journey, 6 months long.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Thank you, Anubha. Any parting thoughts for somebody who's like sitting there listening to this and they're like, hey, I feel a similar need to kind of go explore something different for me, something that feels more innately me, right? Honoring my swabhava.
Yeah, I mean, go for it. The world needs people to be stepping into their calling ever more. If you're feeling stuck or if you're feeling like you're actually not able to get back on track with what your mind thought was your next step, then definitely maybe you're being called to something else. Take the time to explore that, because maybe this is, in a way a sign that it's time for you to expand into more of yourself. And that's what will be, that's what will future-proof people right now, especially as the world is changing rapidly with AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're ready. You're probably more ready than you are. Just go for it.
Yeah, I love that. You're probably more ready than you are. I really love that.
You are ready. You are
yeah.
more ready than you
Yeah.
are. Not even probably. And it's also just it's about having fun also.
Mm.
See what really I tended to try to plan out everything and be very practical in spite of the fact that it looks like a very courageous journey. I was always trying to be practical at each point, and that only slowed me down to some extent. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anubha, for that incredibly insightful conversation. It was really great learning about your journey. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really enjoyed it.